Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marie's World of Writing. Today, I have the amazing pleasure of interviewing author Margreit Maitland, who has crafted a lovely story called Runaway at Sea. It's a great adventure, and there's more to come. So now I'm going to get her on board, and you guys can check this out. This is always the fun part of the process, the adding someone. Wow, that took longer than anticipated today. There Hi. You are. Hello. Welcome to the show. And everyone, if you're joining in, this is Margreit. And I'm going to let her open up and give you a little bit of a synopsis of this book because it's on this show, I want always the stories behind the story. And for you, especially at this, I mean, this is an amazing backstory and I would love to hear it in your words.
Yeah. So I have a copy too. It's right here.
It's beautiful, by the way. Like everything in the book is of art, which is it's important.
Yeah, the cover artist did a tremendous job. He works with my publisher, so I was very grateful that he came up with this amazing cover. So it's great. So the backstory really is right before my grandfather died around 2001, early in the year 2001, I was in Arizona visiting my grandparents, and he gave me the journal of his grandfather, so my great-great-grandfather, and also gave me this trinket, which I left in the other room, which is silly. I should have had it with me. It's a little wooden shoe. And so I took the story, I didn't read it, I put it in the filing cabinet, and I took the little trinket, the wooden shoe, and I put it up on my vanity in its place of trinket honor. And that's where it kind of sat for a couple of years. And he passed, and then my grandmother passed, and I was writing my grandmother's eulogy. I remembered the journal, the story. So I went to the filing cabinet, I pulled it out, I read it, and it blew me away. It just blew me away. And I thought, this is a story that needs to be told. And I kind of germinated in my brain for a little while, and then I started whittling away at it as a hobby. And then I had some people read it who were very salty, boat people. And they some directions and some ideas. And then that set me on this huge research track. I found a librarian in England who drew my family tree for me and wrote me this 10-page handwritten letter about my family history. I contacted the director of U.S. Naval History, and he gave me a 2-page bibliography of research books. So it was really a tremendous journey bringing the story to life. So some of the characters are based on one sentence in the 25 pages typed pages that I have in a very yellow looking old page journal. It's a little bit worn, but the whole series is based on Robert's actual life experiences. So the big things that happen are actually true. And then there's some cursory events that were, literary license to kind of bring him from one true event to another. But he did run away. He did stow away with his friend on the ship, and it did send him on an accidentally on purpose trip around the world for the next 7 years of his life. So, yeah.
That is amazing. I love that at that age, he had the capacity to do it and then to sit down and the dedication to write it out. So was this actually typed out by him, or did he dictate it to another family member who said, we need to sit down and do this?
Right. Was he, when after he made it to America, he then spent 10 years walking east, which is book 3. So which I progress, right? I haven't written on. Book 2 came out a couple of months ago. It's book 2. And book 3 is coming out as soon as I finish writing it. But once he settled and then he had a family, he retold his life story to his 5 children as they sat around the the hearth. And, you know, in those days, in the mid 1800s, you know, late 1800s, there was no television, there was no internet, so it was all storytelling. And then his daughter, my great grandmother, retold his stories to her children, her three children, one of which is my grandfather. And they said, Mom, you have to write this down. So the journal is actually in my great grandmother's voice as she retells what her father said to her.
Okay.
So it's an interesting kind of second party, and now I'm this other party trying to take her interpretation of his crazy stories and put it into this form that is hopefully enjoyable by all.
So your genre, technically, this is kind of like young adult. Like, what is your captive audience that you're marketing to?
Well, really trying to do fifth grade and up. So really age 10 and
Okay.
up. He did run away to escape abuse, and there are some rough spots regarding the abuse and some of the life aboard that can be a little rough. So I'm thinking age 10 and up. So we are getting in touch with curriculum directors, superintendents, English teachers, social studies teachers, you know, history teachers, etc., to try to get the book added to the recommended reading list, to the curriculum, because there's a whole lot of history in here, and it's a really yeah, it's a really fun way to get kids engaged. I mean, even studying Benjamin Franklin as he charted the currents, you know, a lot of how they sailed around the world to move goods from one continent to another depended heavily on the trade winds and the currents of the oceans. And if Benjamin Franklin didn't chart those out, we really would have been like almost on a hamster wheel in the middle of the ocean, not going anywhere, because if you don't follow the currents, it gets pretty tough. So things
Yeah.
like that. That is actually a teacher's guide that we put in book 2. And I did another one for book 1. So the revised versions of book 1 will have the teacher guide with just questions, research questions, essay ideas, you know, historical context across all kinds of different subject matters for kids. So we're really focused on age 10 and up. A lot of my readers are grown-ups, and they really enjoy the story. So there's nobody that can't read it. But we are really trying to get it into the schools and get kids excited about history, excited about learning history through a real story.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit an immigration story, because he got here in a very about on purpose accidental way. So
It is a beautiful survivor story. And so now when I'm wondering about this, like it seems like it's the age of the characters that you're kind of using as what you're marketing the story around. But for
yeah.
you as a person, like when were you, at what age were you inspired to say, all right, this has to become a story? And is that like tied into how you wrote it at all?
Well, I was an avid reader as a kid. I
Okay.
read classics. I read detective novels. I read a lot of Tom Clancy espionage. I read some Stephen King, but I also got lost in a lot of Daniel Steele romance novels. I was really all over the place. My favorite book is Gone with the Wind, always. My second favorite is Anna Karenina. So those are my two top books, which are classics.
Mhm.
So I always wanted to write. I'm pretty creative. I did a little bit of theater in high school, so I have a bit of a creative part of me. So my college friends would say, oh, she always said she wanted to write a book. But I never had an original concept. And so this just kind of came along, and it became an original concept. And then it was really learning the craft, just learning how to bring imagery to the page, how to use, all our senses. And when I'm writing, I try to think, well, in this paragraph or on this page, how many times are my readers able to see it, to feel it, to taste it, to smell it, to hear it? And as many senses as I can put on a page, I do try to do that. So it
Yes.
really a real journey and a growth for me over the years working on this first book. The second book I finished much faster because I'm much better at it now. But it was definitely a journey and a learning experience.
For sure. I love that you learn to write to tell the story.
Yeah.
I think so often we are like moved as people by a story that needs to be told, and we're like, okay, now in order to get this out, let me develop the wherewithal to do it. And
Right.
I love that you say you did some acting because dialogue is a huge part of this book. And you obviously, dialogue is not a normal skill. You have to develop that. So, what, and little boys talking too, like as a grown woman, how are you? How'd you do that?
Well, now that was a big challenge for me because the first versions of the book, when I started it, had almost no dialogue because I was terrified of dialogue. Also, I was writing a period piece from the mid 1800s, so I didn't know whether I should speak Old English, but I thought that A, that's hard to write, and B, it's hard to read. So if I want to capture the imagination of fifth, sixth graders, middle schoolers, high schoolers, if I make it too hard for them, it's not going to happen.
Yes.
So I stayed away from the dialogue, and then I joined a critique group. And then the critique group, I started using the dialogue, and it just really helped move the story, move the plot, define the plot and the story arc, and define the characters. And it became, actually now it's my favorite thing to do is if I find myself writing and the paragraph is too long, I'm thinking, no, there has to be interaction with the character here, because this paragraph, I can't write a whole page where it's only exposition. I want, if that's the case, and I change it and I bring in some dialogue.
I love it. I love it. I'm right there on the same with you. Like, in order to write, I did the same thing. I was like, I wasn't a writer at first. And I learned it along the way. And you like get the story out first, and then the dialogue kind of comes in next. Yeah, it's the whole process.
And the critique group was really valuable. I still go to one, although this summer we were a little bit broken up over the summer, but I still go to one, and they're the ones that set me straight. They're the ones that say, a 12-year-old boy wouldn't say this, even in 1849. So you got to switch it, so they definitely kept me in check if I veered too much to modern terms. And then that's where research comes in, where, I can't use the flip-flop, right? They didn't say flip-flop in 1849. So, I mean, that's one example, but a million things came up in the exposition and the dialogue where I'm like, wait a minute, is that what they called that object in that time period? And then I have to go back to the origin of words and where it came from and where was it used and how often. And so, because these were uneducated boys that couldn't read and couldn't swim. And that's the truth. So if it comes out of his mouth, it's got to be authentic to that mindset in that character sketch, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. That critique groups are amazing. I am so happy you found one that like did this for you, because it can be like, it can be make or break. Like if it's a negative experience, you almost just wall away. But if it's every person that reads a book and like gives you a little more information, I think it just becomes a richer experience. So
and it made me a better writer, absolutely. And it's one of the things about writing, it can't be closed to somebody saying page 3 really stinks. Like you have to be here. You had me, and then paragraph 3, you went off on something, and I don't know what you're doing or what you're talking about. So you have to be open to that. And in the journey of book 1, I wrote 7 chapters of backstory about Robert before he ran away. Then I had a friend of others who is a published author read it for me. And she said, I really like your writing. It really engaged me, but the action doesn't start until chapter 8. So I would make chapter 8, chapter 1. So then I took the first 3 pages of chapter 1 and the first 3 pages of chapter 8 to my critique group. And I said, what do you think? And they overwhelmingly said, chapter 8 needs to be chapter 1. And I essentially dropped 7 chapters from the book, 6 months of writing. But ouch. So we, in my critique group, calls that you have to be ready to kill your darlings. And that was 7 chapters. It was a lot of work, and it hurt, but the book was better for it. And actually those 7 chapters became my free ebook download, which is the prequel, which is available on the website, so it can be downloaded or whatever. And so I did essentially use it down the road, but not in this book. It became the prequel. But that's what happened.
What was your journey to, like, I guess, can I ask, you're traditionally published?
Yeah.
Like,
well, Yeah, my publisher is an indie publisher here on Long Island, but it's a publisher. Like, I did not do self-publishing.
Okay. How did that happen for you? Like, what was your road to this?
Okay, so that's another little bit of a round. I'm not good at short stories, which is why I'm a writer, right? So I'll try to make this, I don't know, colorful. So I not only joined the petite group, but I'm just a joiner in general. I know I join local community work, and I do a lot of networking for my regular profession. So in my networking group, I met somebody, and at the time the book was done, and I was querying literary agents to no end. I mean, I probably sent out
Yeah.
close to 30 queries. Nobody came back to me even asking for the manuscript. So it was very disheartening and hard as a writer to be like, my readers are telling me they love my book, and no literary agents are interested. And this is not about slamming agents, because they work very hard and they all do a great job. So I'm not overly trying to be critical. So I went to this networking group, and a friend of mine I met through there said, you know what, I know you're doing writing. Why don't you call my friend Stephanie and just pick her brain, right? So he gave me her number. I called her. We had a great 30-minute phone meeting. She said, send me 4 chapters. Let me take a look at what you're doing. And she does a lot of nonfiction. She's been dabbling in fiction, etc. So I didn't hear from her for 3 weeks. I followed up. Then another 2 weeks went by, and I didn't hear from her. And I thought, she didn't like it. Oh no, and then lo and behold, like 6-7 weeks after, she reached out to me and said, I want to publish the whole series. Like, she didn't even read the whole book. She just came back and said, you blew me away with 4 chapters. I love it. Let's do the series together. And there we are. And she has become a very good friend and advisor. I love her to pieces. It's her cover artist that, comes up with this.
Oh,
Book, this fantastic cover he came up with. So it's been a great advisor, teaching me about the publishing end of the business, which is completely different than writing. 1,000%
yeah.
different.
If you today could go back and like talk to you who just had that little vision to say, I'm going to write a book from this, do you think you would even believe yourself at where you
No,
are now?
no. I mean, I wanted to write it, but I really never thought that I would ever get to be like published author, like twice over now, and third one coming, so, and I have all kinds of ideas for when I'm done with this series of what to bring out next. So I really love it. It really brings out the creative part of my personality and my brain, and I just love it. And Robert's story is so incredible. And also what came out of it was developing a writing workshop for kids. So for libraries and school visits, I have this program, which could be in person or virtual, where there's 8 units, and we can kind of cherry pick your favorite. If you're a teacher, you can cherry pick your favorite units, and we can put a program together for kids just to get them excited, and different ways of them bringing out their imaginations, etc. So of course, now with the pandemic, it was hard last year. There was no way they were going to do assembly programs last year. This year, I don't know, but I do have a couple of libraries booked coming up in a couple of months to do some virtual programming with the library and some kids. I did do that last year, so that's fun. And then from that, my publisher and I developed a boot camp for grown-ups. So we have a creative writing boot camp series also. And so
Wow.
teaching aspect of which I really enjoy. I probably should have been a teacher, but I missed it. I don't know. I made different decisions. But anyway,
You're doing it now.
I'm doing it now, and it's really fun. It's really fun to do a program with kids. It was great to do that video series, which is available on the Red Penguin classes website.
Okay.
Yeah. So that piece of it has been just completely accidental. Like, I didn't think I was going to write, publish, and then develop some type of a program to teach kids and grown-ups about writing. So I didn't think I was going to do that, but here we are.
What was the impetus for that? Were you just like having a conversation with someone one day and you're like, you know what, we need this? And you just.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I grew up on Long Island in Suffolk County, near Stony Brook area. So anybody that's not in Lower New York may not know where that is. But I contacted the superintendent of my school district, my alma mater, my high school district, and I just had sent them an email. I'm an alumni. I've just published this book. I would love to, have you guys read it and see if you think it's appropriate for recommended reading list or curriculum or whatever. The superintendent got in touch with me. We had a great phone meeting, and he's the one who suggested that I think about developing some type of a writing program for an author visit. And that, they wanted to have me come into the school system. So it would actually came through that, trying to market the book, to have a conversation with an educator who then got me started on thinking about a workshop, and then it, and then I put it all together, and of course gave it to my mom, and then my mom gave me her feedback, and then we got developed even further. So yay moms. So
right. Oh, I
yeah.
love it. Yes, moms are amazing. Amazing. And like what you can do with that, writing is such a gift. And one of my favorite quotes is like, creativity isn't just a gift to the audience. Like it is a gift to the creator. What we achieve for ourselves through the process, it's healing, it's therapy, it's monumental. So to give that gift to others and cultivate it within them is I mean, it's got to be so rewarding.
It's super important. And when I think about when my grandfather gave me that story, neither one of us had this in our heads. But my grandfather used to say, when he thought I was on the right track, he would say, that's cooking on the front burner. And I think, he's somewhere thinking you're cooking on the front burner, that you took this and you turned it into the series. So I am very proud of the work. And I'm very proud to, every time I hear, get a review and I get somebody who read it. And I was at a networking event a week and a half ago, and somebody I know, professional, association, pulled me over to the side and said, I went on Amazon and I did the ebook reader, whatever, and I read the first 60 pages, and I'm really impressed. And he's an attorney, whatever, but he was. And it just was amazing. It's amazing to get feedback like that. So
every time people read your words, there's like this little part of you that comes to life. I hope it never goes away. Like, I hope you always get that little excitement for it. And
we feel nervous every time somebody says, I bought the book, I'm reading the book, or if I send it out to, somebody who's a name in the literary world, or the name in the, or somebody I know, like even from in high school when I did a little theater, there's some people I know from that world that I'm, Facebook connected, we do reunions, that kind of thing. And I've sent the book out to a few of them, and I've got, that was nerve-wracking to wait for that. It's almost like waiting for a New York Times review.
Like, I just be like, kill me, and I don't ever want to know.
And you just gave the performance of your life. You poured your heart and soul into this work, and now some random person in the audience is going to write a review about you. It's really nerve-wracking, but it's very rewarding when it comes back positive, and really have gotten almost like 100% positive feedback on the book. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, serious congratulations to you, because that is fantastic. And like it's certainly not always the case. I mean, I feel like so often stuff is polarizing. I don't believe that like children's literature is going to be as polarizing. I hope that the people reading that are going to be just generally better. But I've talked to so many authors too who are like, I just stopped reading the reviews, because it's like one good one, and then sometimes you get these that are just so
and you're not going to please everybody, and certainly this is historical fiction, adventure, kind of boy to like growing to man kind of story. I have had girls read it, I've had women read it, and they've all enjoyed it, but there's bound to be somebody it's just not their thing, it's not their cup of tea, it's not their genre, and it's okay. That's okay. So you have to, that's one of the things that using a critique group has done for me, is made my skin very thick.
You can't move forward in this world unless it's the thickest. Yeah.
Yes, and not to get defensive. If somebody says, whatever, there's a typo on page, 77. Oh my God, there's a typo. Like, rather than freak out, just find it, we fix it, and it's so it's just the critique group has taught me to roll with it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Oh,
Mhm.
so as far as the historical component of this goes, do you have like a room somewhere or a wall with like poster boarding and like diagramming, or how did you map this all out? Like tell me about your research process.
Okay, so with the first book, I used the journal. I kind of read it 1,000 times, so I had a lot of it in my brain. And I just kind of had this idea of how I want the story to move from the day he climbed aboard and hid in the lifeboat to the day he, switched to a different ship, which is, whatever, like to the beginning to end of book one. And initially it was actually all one book. But
Okay.
then I had an agent read it and counsel me, a little bit, give me some guidance and say, in this genre, in the middle grade genre, and 50 to 70,000 words, anything more than that is too big. She said, break it up into a series.
Yeah.
So that's how it was a series, actually, quite accidentally, because I got that advice, and I think it was pretty good advice. So I just would immerse myself in a chapter, and then I would just start to research. So I found captain's journals from that time period on Google Docs in the open domain. So Google Docs has a lot of information. But when I started, early on, the internet wasn't as big. Like, it has really grown tremendously, even in a decade, right? So
Oh,
when I
so
first
much.
hobby, a lot of this was a little bit old world. And I was going to my library, who is why they're in my acknowledgments in the first book, because I would go in there when the historical director of the U.S. Navy gave me that 2 pages of books. There was one copy in Kentucky, and then this other book, like one copy in Oregon, or whatever it was. They were all over the place, and my librarian took my list and ordered those books for me, and I got them and I read them, and I have a composition book with all different drawings of how to tack a ship, how to wear a ship, the anatomy of a sail, all the different pieces of the ship, the command structure. I read Herman Melville, I read Patrick O'Brien, I read Richard Dana. I watched Master and Commander about 10,000 times. I don't know if you know that movie.
I haven't, but I'm gonna have to put it on my recommended to do
Yeah, yeah,
list.
it's Russell Crowe. I'm a Russell Crowe fan, but it's an
Oh yeah.
absolutely fantastic movie based on a Patrick O'Brien novel, of which he has many, of the Age of Sail. It's set a little bit earlier than my period, in the Napoleon time period, but the visual references were so valuable to me. So not only do I love the movie and I'm fine watching it over and over, but when I was writing about cannons and the cannon drill, I would throw that disc in and just watch that scene over and over, and then I would read it and then watch and then read what I wrote and then kind of adjust it, and just for the realism of those were 2-ton cannons, and there were like 50 of them on the ship, and you would always wonder, why didn't the ship sink? It's so heavy with all these you know big heavy 100-foot masts made from trees from the rainforest or wherever they pulled their timber from. So I would research as I go. And sometimes I did get caught in the loop of the rabbit hole of the internet, so that's, you got to stop yourself from going too far. But I really
Yeah.
was so happy that it was authentic. And I would
Yeah.
research it to the nth degree. And a lot of the stuff in my research didn't even make it into the book. But it's one of those things, like if you're an actor, you do a character sketch because you want to
Yeah.
bring that drama right to the stage. But a lot of that doesn't necessarily in your lines that you're reading. It's in the body language, it's in the setting, it's in the way you respond to other people. So it ends up in the character and in the setting and the world building anyway.
Yes.
But definitely a lot of research that didn't actually make it into the book. It was just for me to get almost feel like, I don't know if you saw The Perfect Storm, if anybody read that
Oh
book.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So
Yes.
that's more current day, right? And that's based on a true story. It was an incredible book. What an amazing job that whose author is escaping me the name. But it was way before I started writing, but when I read that book, it really affected me. It was pre-movie, and I would sit in my back patio and I would look at the trees 80 feet high in my backyard, and I would think, what if that was a wave? Like, how would I feel if that was a wave about to crash on my head and I'm in this little tiny boat climbing this vertical wall of water? And it would amaze me. And then I started writing the book. And in the introduction of the first book, I kind of talk about that because through my research of storms and Atlantic Ocean currents and whaling and all of that stuff, so these storms were, I mean, these waves really are 50 feet, 100 feet, and some of these horrendous hurricanes. And it's absolutely amazing that any ship survived, survived the rounding of the Horn, coming from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. That's dangerous even today with modern radar. We still lose ships, big tankers and all of that. We still lose down there. So it's a very dangerous undertaking. And I mean, just over the edge of my phone right now, I'm looking out my window and this big, huge tree, and I'm thinking that's got to be, 60, 70 feet high. And I wonder, what would that be like if that was a wave coming at me? How would I feel? And that realness of being lost in the research and lost in the movie for a visual reference or a book for, whatever, that I hope makes it into the book. That feeling of panic, of terror, of I'm going to die. So the research was really important. And I definitely immersed myself in captain's logs and books. And actually there's one right here. This one, Naval Ceremonies, Customs and Traditions was one of the used. And also as a growth of a writer, another book is great. The Stephen King book on writing. This is him writing up. If you're a writer, you should read this book. So this was one of the research books, and I have a bunch of others over there off camera, but some of them are big, and that's where I got all the anatomy and the layout of the ship. And so when Robert's getting walked through the ship, that was literally me sitting on my living room floor with this book open, reading about every deck of the ship, and then closing my eyes and kind of thinking of myself when I was 10 or 11 or 12. And when I first saw something that was new and how it made me feel, and being able to empathize with that and do that level of research is what brings the authenticity to the page. Well, I hope it brings the authenticity. Yeah.
It is so there. And I mean, that's when you read the reviews and when everyone else says, it's like, this book makes you feel like you're on the ship, that you're in the water, you can smell the sea, like the whole experience, just even feeling like the way that you said, you tried to put a sensation, a tactile sense on each page, and it completely shows. And I think it's interesting because you are not a sailor, or like, what's your personal experience?
I am a coastal person. I love the beach. I love the water, but I don't own a boat. And unfortunately for me, and I'm hoping to remedy this in the next year, I've not even taken a sailing lesson. So a lot of this really was reading and researching. And there's a scene in the book, in the first book, where they're rowing the boat. So I literally watched a YouTube video instructing people on how to row a boat. And I sat on my couch and I pretended I went through this. I know how to row a boat, right? Yeah, I mean, I paddleboard and all that, but I'm like thinking, okay, this is a kid who can't swim. He doesn't read. He's never been to school. So how is he doing? And then he's 12 and his friend is 14. So they're going to mess it up, right? So then I'm thinking, how to mess it up? And so I'm thinking, well, they can't quite get the sink and they can't quite get the forward, backward, reverse kind of motion that is nautical movement, so it's so I literally sat on my couch for like an hour watching these YouTubes and reading step-by-step instructions on how to row a boat. And and that's how that scene came to be. But it was a lot of me just trying to actually act it out and imagine what it would be like if I was 12 and I didn't know how to do anything. So
I love it. Now, okay, this is the level of dedication. Everyone who's watching, you need to go to this level. want to write a book and publish it and get it read, this
Mhm.
level of obsession gets you there.
Yes.
And it comes out on page, but you've got to go that far. Like,
Yeah.
when you were writing, what did your friends and family say? Were they like, Margreit, like, come
Like,
back to her?
and they'd be like, oh, why don't you come over? We're having some wine and cheese and, like bring the kids, do whatever. I'm like, I'm writing. I can't, I can't do it. And probably, they're like, huh, I don't understand, or I don't get it. It's whatever. But when you're in it, like my push to finish the second, as like I wanted to finish it before Christmas. So obviously it didn't happen. I was definitely late and I had some writer's blocks and all of that. But I would literally come home and just close the door. And I just was so laser focused on writing it and this and that. My critique group was doing virtual meetings, and I did an emergency call to one of my critique group members because I was trying to get to the end. And I kind of hit a snag in realism. Like, how do I get over this hump of making sure that it's real? And I was on the phone with her for like an hour and a half talking through. So it sometimes it was, I'm going to write a couple of paragraphs. Sometimes I spent hours staring at a blank page. Sometimes I sat down and I just wrote 3 chapters in an hour. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's just so choppy. You just sometimes don't know. But yeah. But when you want to, you've got to just lock yourself away. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now everything, book 1, 2, and 3 is already like written out. Book 1's published. Book 2 just came out.
Right. And 3 is not written yet, but I have the outline.
Okay.
Little break in between them. And book 3 is a lot of U.S. history coming at you. It's the Gold Rush, it's Pioneer, it's the push of westward expansion, it's the beginning of the Civil War. There's all kinds of American history going on. And so there's going to be a lot of research involved in that. I'm excited about writing it, but I have the journal, so the journal gives me the outline. But yeah, so if I'm lucky, I can finish before Christmas. If I miss Christmas again, but it would be great to finish it by Christmas, but now it's September 1st. So yeah, I don't know.
Time flies.
Yes,
so
it does.
Did you use quarantine as one of the major moments to get the first one out? Was that part of your process, or?
The first one came out pre-quarantine. Like we literally launched it in the beginning of February. I put all my marketing together for schools and teachers and this and that, and then everything shut down.
Of course.
We did use the quarantine to develop the workshop for kids, for library. And we did use the quarantine to develop the creative writing boot camp because I had the worst of writer's block moving from book 1 to book 2. I just couldn't get away from the characters of book 1. It's like I fell in love with them, or I felt close to them, and I couldn't let it go and shift into. It kind of took me a little while to hit that transition. So in the meantime, we did this other stuff. Now this one launched June 30th, so I've had a nice couple of months of break. So I'm going to start hitting it like after Labor Day, I think. But I don't know that I can get the 3rd one done in time for Christmas release, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. It takes so much to release a book. So I think that is definitely a optimistic goal, but knowing that you've already have everything in place.
Yeah, I which is my outline, but then the other piece of it is once the writing's done, and then it's what are we doing? Are we doing illustrations for every chapter? Are we not? Then I have to do the teacher guide because that's now our thing. We want to do a teacher guide for each book. And then it's the title. Like, it's hard to come up with a title.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a couple of days at least of just making lists of words. And then I kind of put them in front of my kids. My kids help me come up with both titles. But you come up with action words, and then I use a source, and I literally have page after page of random words. And then just trying to figure it out, like which goes with the story, which is engaging, which may grab interest. So the title could take a week or 2 weeks to even do that. And then it's the cover artist. Then I have to send it out to beta readers because I want to get reviews on the jacket. So I send it out to sisters and, whatever, have them read to get blurbs. So there's this whole step-by-step before it can get into the publishing. So there's at least a month of it needs to go through an edit. It needs to go to beta readers. It need like all of these steps. So I could it December 1st, which is really aggressive goal. But if I did that, I still may not make Christmas because I still have to have it edited and all these other steps. So it's really, yeah.
Yeah. So I just like turned to one of these pages because I wanted to show this to the readers because I thought this was like the cutest stuff. And you were telling me the backstory. Each chapter in this book has this really they're beautiful pictures. They add so much to the whole process. So what is the story behind these pictures?
Okay, so one of my closest friends ever, she has three talented daughters in all kinds of ways, right? I mean, my kids are talented too, but we'll just brag about her kids right now. So her middle daughter is good friends with my daughter, and she's a very talented artist. So before I had a publisher, when I was querying agents, like I was trying to finish it, I had asked her if she would do these chapter illustrations for me. And so she said that she would, and at the time she was still in high school. So she had started doing them the summer before we published. So right before I met my publisher and signed the publishing deal, she had started, I had given her, each illustration is something that to do with what happens in that chapter.
Yeah.
And sketched them, and then she hand inked them. So she did 23 illustrations because there's 23 chapters, all by hand. She's a very meticulous and for a high schooler, now she's in college, but she was very meticulous, very professional. We had scheduled meetings and we went over the illustrations and the edits, and it was an incredible process, learning for me, learning for her. It was great, but I'm very proud to say that, Amanda was 17 when she did these illustrations. She's in school now, doing more art, but she's extremely talented artist. And I'm very proud of her, and I'm very proud to have her work in the book. So she's not going to do any of the ones in book because she's too busy. So I didn't even ask her because there was no way she was going to be able to get it done. So we did another thing for book 2. But we'll see what happens with book 2. If she has time, I can pull her in you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm so excited. I have not gotten onto book 2 yet, but just to see how this story keeps evolving. And I really, okay. So we actually have a fantastic question. So Carrie on reading is asking what grade level this is for. And once again, so I'll let you answer her.
Because he ran away from home, and he ran away really primarily to escape the abuse of his oldest brother, is why I say age 10 and up. But if you have a fourth grader who can read Harry Potter or Hunger Games, you can definitely read my book. So I guess mine is way not in the Hunger Games, Harry Potter, as far as psychologically dark stuff. But it really is going to be case by case for the child. So if you have a reader who can handle Harry Potter, they can certainly read my book. Absolutely, 1,000%. But the target when I'm marketing, I always say age 10 and up. So, and my creative writing workshop is really designed for like age 10 to 16, really. So
how many people have you had go through the workshop thus far? Or how many times have you done it on the children's level?
The pandemic, I haven't really done a lot with the schools. I'm hoping that will change this coming year. Now that classes are kind of up and running, we have a digital package that's going out to all, at least our schools here in Lower New York, and then I'm going to work my way across the country and throughout the state. But so it's really been more library programs. So I've done a couple of the virtual library programs where we had actually a bunch of 3rd and 4th graders who, I don't know that they read the book, but they signed up for the virtual writing program. And what we did was we talked about the story arc and how to take reader through the story arc, and we created a character from the mid 1800s, and we threw all on the fly. We didn't even write it. We just talked through it. And we created the character. We created her goal. And then we threw all kinds of crazy obstacles in her way before she could reach her goal to illustrate the ups and downs of the story arc and how to get get yourself through the plot line, subplot lines, and then subplot lines to subplot lines, how depending on how complex. But we had a really, really good time. It was about 45 minutes, and I did that a couple of times too. So from that perspective, I think the kids had fun. I didn't come up with anything. They all came up with the obstacles and the things that get in her way and how does she overcome them. And so it was a lot of fun.
That's so cool. Kids have these like brilliant imaginations, and when you just let them use that and like work together, so many cool things will arise.
Yeah, so I was really excited, and had some parents tell the librarian that their child said how much they enjoyed the program. So that was very rewarding. So that's the teaching kind of accidental thing that happened from the writing. So, but yeah, I would say 10 and up, unless you have an advanced fourth grader, in which case, as I said, if you can read Harry Potter, you can read my book. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Now, if we are getting near the end of the hour, is there anyone else that has a question? If you do, just type it in. We will get to it. So feel free to shoot off a question. And then, I mean, from your standpoint, anything we haven't covered, anything that you want people really to take away from today?
I would just think, whether you're writing or doing anything, one of the things I learned about myself is, don't let fear stop you from doing something new. And when I say doing something new, of course, this means something productive, not something dangerous, like, jumping off a building or something. But I mean, like something, productive, a goal, a dream that you have, even if you have to whittle away a little bit on the side, don't give up on it, and stick with it. And because that perseverance will bring it to fruition. Because don't give up, just don't give up. And I didn't give up. There were people telling me, you're wasting your time, and this is, this, and this is that. And I just plowed through it. And I'm so happy that I did.
You are an amazing success story. Like, I am sitting here inspired and motivated because I've been at the game for, gosh, I think I started writing in 2015, and it's been this long, and it's not a matter of like instant success. It is a matter of grind. And success is finding that finally inside yourself. You're like, yes, I'm a writer. I am on this writing journey, but it's that whole journey that enhances your life, like makes you a stronger, tougher person. And it just, it's what you get out of it. Never give up. Like, that is so important for people to know, because this industry where defeat happens easily.
And you know what? It's really, really hard for writing, especially if you're a debut writer and you don't have, a following or a name, or, 10 million people on your Instagram feed or your Facebook list or whatever. It's very hard to get over that hump. But don't let that deter you. I mean, I ended up finding an publisher, and it was a great match for the two of us. But there are lots of other ways to get published. You can there's lots of self-published, there's hybrid publishing. I've been to conferences, in Brooklyn and upstate New York, and, all kinds of stuff where you just run into people. And, literary agents go to these conferences. They like to get advice. They want new stories. They're just overwhelmed. They just have a lot of stuff at them. But if you can't find an agent in a reasonable amount of time, it's okay to self-publish. It's okay to do a hybrid. It's okay to, and don't give up because literary agents are very, very swamped and busy, and just because they don't get back to you doesn't mean the work isn't good. So
and if you were overwhelmed by this like desire to tell a story, get it out. Like, there was a reason that it captivated you and that you had to tell the story. Don't give up on it.
Yeah, it was a really great inheritance. Like I said before, that I don't think either of us would have thought was the end result of him handing me that story. So I'm very about that and proud of it. And, a lot of people tell me he made into a movie, and that's a whole other mountain to climb, trying to get somebody to take a look at it from that perspective. But it's, I'm just happy to have such good feedback. So
the sky is the limit. And when I see what you started with, where you are now, I would certainly not write that off. I mean, everyone says this industry is like a snail. So you came like your snail is going at a really rapid pace. Like, good job, snail. So yeah, I think we'll see this in our lifetimes for sure. We
I hope
need
so.
stories like this, you know. This is just, it's like one of those heartwarming tales that really
Yeah.
gives us our you know, our stories, the stories of what formed the people who came here, and that, you know, it's
Yeah.
important.
And I think like this is my great great grandfather. There's a million things that could have gone wrong in any centimeter one way or the other. And for some magical reason, he survived all of this. And because of that, I'm here. So, you know, that's another aspect to this storytelling for me in this series is it's really incredible how easily it could have gone so the other way. And it didn't. So I'm grateful for that.
That's so cool. Yep, the miracle of life and telling the stories, getting to be a storyteller. That is so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So book one available, Amazon, any other outlets, or where can we get it?
Mostly it's Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com. We're in a couple of local bookstores, but I think because now we have a series, we're going to try to get Barnes and Noble, you know, to pick it up and do it nationwide. That would be incredible. But we'll see how far we get with that. But we have to kind of start little, like the publishing piece and the marketing part of this business is really involved. And it's, I mean, I'm good at sales and relationship, and that's part of my regular, you know, career. So, you know, and it's still challenging. It's just, it's a challenge. So we're just trying to like this and get the word out and work with schools and that and get kids excited about history and learning and do this true story. So
Who was the first kid that you had read this? Like,
I actually had the children of friends of mine read it. So and the parents are sailors, like
oh,
avid. And so the young man who read it for me was also an avid sailor. So it was great for them to read it and get back to me and say they found my research was really spot on and accurate. So does that build confidence? You know, every time somebody says something like that. So
yeah.
so that was really the first person outside my friend or family circle that read it.
Yeah, kids are like, if they like it, they will tell you they like it,
Yeah.
and if they don't, they will tell you they don't. So
Yeah.
if you captivated that, you know, and he was a sailor and authentic,
Yeah.
that's
No, I
that,
was very
you know,
happy.
you won. All right. Well, I thank you so much for joining me. This has been a pleasure, a highlight. I'm more inspired to write after talking to you. So I like, you know, I love hearing your story. Yeah, thank you so much again. I'll make sure we save this. It's going to stay on Instagram live in my feed, and then it's also going to end up on YouTube. We'll make sure that there are links to the book, that there are, you said there's links also for your workshops?
Yeah, if you go to the runawayatc.com, there's several tabs on the website. So you have the book stuff, you have event stuff. We have an essay contest going on now. We just extended the deadline into October, so that should be updated with the date. But that's, you know, if a child enters the essay contest and answers the question and wins, they win 25 copies of the book for their class. So yeah, so we have that going on. An event, if you're on Long Island, we have an event in October on the 9th at the Montauk Lighthouse, which I'm really excited about. So all that stuff is on the website, including the link to the workshop and the link to the boot camp for grown-ups. Trailers, we have video trailers for the books up on the website. So there's lots of stuff there.
I love it. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank
Okay.
you so much. Readers, check her out. You will not be disappointed.
Yeah. Thank you
All
so
right.
much for having me.
Yes,
Bye,
my
everybody.
pleasure.